Morning, everyone. Welcome to Coffee Talk. We're down. Jeff's a little under the weather this week, so it's just Kevin and I.
You know, I would say
Yeah.
just about every family that we've talked to, and all the ones on our soccer team, friends, everybody, somebody has somebody sick.
Someone
Here,
home
there,
sick
and
in my
everywhere.
house today too. It's yep.
Or they've just been sick, or they're just getting, like, everybody's got it. So, 'tis the season.
So if you're watching this in bed or on the couch under a pile of blankets with a hot tea, we hope you're feeling well soon. But no, it's good to spend a few minutes together, connect, look back, look forward about what's going on in life for Lakeview. Hopefully you got out and enjoyed some snow this week.
Yeah, it's been good.
We got some sledding in. I will say I am still feeling it from a little bump. Sheena, I don't know when she's going to learn. From like almost day one of us dating, we keep every now and then we'll go sledding together, and she'll be like, "Hey, we got this big cushy sled." She's like, "You want to do a ride together?" And so every now and then we do a ride together. And on Sunday we did a ride together, and I steered us. I don't know why I do this, right into some massive like moguls. And of course, we flew up and the sled flew out, and I landed hard. I landed so hard, I haven't been able to sit comfortably since Sunday. And I even ripped open my snow pants. Like I hit like, boom, and I get to the bottom, like, I think I split my pants. And my tailbone's been sore since. So anyways, fun in the snow for those of us who are middle-aged, but it's good times. Hopefully you got to enjoy some fun in the snow.
Have you heard that
this
phrase?
week.
I fell so hard my grandkids are going to feel it.
Well, they might still be talking about it. Winter of 25 when Grandpa. Anyways, we need to move on. But it's a great season just to kind of. It was Family Day weekend too, so it's a great season to spend some time with family, whether that's they're here or wherever. Okay, so continuing, a view from the top.
Mm-hmm.
We had our bloody passage this week,
Yeah.
and I appreciate that Jeff didn't take it too graphic, but we're looking at that passage on adultery, and I think sometimes this is a passage that gets misused a little bit, right? Sometimes we use it to try and define adultery and make sure we know in our boundaries how far can we go. That's kind of human nature, right? We often want to ask where the boundary is, not because we want to stay far away from it, but because we want to know how close to the edge can I get without getting in trouble.
And the other thing that we also miss is we then say, this is the all-encompassing Jesus passage that is literally about adultery. Yeah. And I think it's quite possible in the midst of all of this, he's also saying, well, you've heard it said, let's say given adultery, okay? You've heard it said this, but I'm telling you this. Here's another way that I'm telling you I'm fulfilling this law, and I'm just happen to be using this as an example because he used murder, and he used, that is another example and an extreme. And like Jeff said, these are a couple of case studies. That doesn't mean here's now the definitive answer on all things adultery either. And I think he's saying there's something larger in this fulfillment of the Old Testament that is coming in this new kingdom. Yeah. And I think that's, like you said, I think that's what we miss. This is a case study of adultery. But that doesn't mean that Jesus is wrong in what he's saying either. Right. And that's,
I think you made a good point. This is not a definitive treatise on everything there is to know about Jesus' perspective on it, but he's sharing something specific for that group that he wanted us to know too. I think that's why Matthew recorded it, so that others would know. He weren't there, but let me tell you what Jesus said. Yeah. And I think it's a good perspective. So
what did Jesus say?
What did Jesus say, right? He starts talking about, better to cut off your hand or gouge out your eye than to be caught in lust. And what Jeff walked us through was that even if you did those things, you could still be guilty of it, right? You could still get caught up in it because it's an internal as well as an external. And you can remove yourself from an external act, but if you're still doing it on the inside, you're still doing it.
And Jesus is saying, this is not just a literal taking of it. Right?
And partly because it deals with how we treat people And are we objectifying people? I think one of the words that started coming to my mind was, are we treating them like a commodity, like just something we deal in, right? Like it's almost like a way of abusing people, right? In that we just sort of say, well, they're just this and that, and and it's, what am I always going to get from them? But he was specific on, do we treat them like an object? Something that we, when I think of an object, I think of like, I'm looking at your water cup over there, right? If a person, I'm treating a person like a water cup, then I'm just using them for this purpose, and when I'm done with it, I'm done with it. And Jesus is saying, no, don't do that. So, I guess the question for us then is, so then what? If whether we're someone who finds ourselves being treated a certain way, or we find ourselves getting sucked into treating people like objects, how do we, what do we do that's better, I guess? What does Jesus offer us that is so much greater that we can pursue?
Yeah. I don't know if that's an easy one because it is hard to say with the now what, especially because if you are taking this as a literal thing, which I don't think Jesus fully intended, but if you are taking this as a literal thing, I think Jesus is also trying to say, you will find yourself drawn to these things, drawn to using people. First of all, I'm asking you not to, but I'm also saying there's something more greater that actually is happening in the background that we don't always see. And I think that's what Jesus is pointing to, is that like there's something deeper going on here than just adultery. There's a deeper wreckage happening in your heart and in your mind and in your life. Okay, so now what do you do with it? That's actually where I find is a challenge, because it's really easy to just say don't do it. Great, done.
It's like the Bob Newhart counseling advice. Stop it.
Yeah.
Right? If you look up I love that old sketch. Like you just but Jesus isn't. I think he offers more than just saying stop it.
Yeah.
Right? And
I think this is also one of those passages that we keep as we work our way through the Sermon on the Mount. We do ourselves maybe a disservice by doing a chunk and a chunk and a chunk, because all of this is on the heels of the Beatitudes or the blessings or whatever that he's saying. It is so much better for you to be pure in heart, because there is greater reward there. And if you aren't, and you're pursuing these other things, please know that there is please know that there is calamity waiting for you, that there is turmoil, and wouldn't you rather choose something better? And so Jesus uses this example of, okay, you were saying earlier that hell is terrible, but it's a whole lot easier to maybe be without your hand than to endure that. But even to put more of a positive spin on that, rather than just going handless, to say, to understand that blessed are you when you are pursuing all that God has for you in purity and joy and grace and meekness and humility. When you see all of those things, it's so much better for you to aim for that than to find yourself in a much more terrible place where you're using people, where you're devaluing, like Jeff talked a lot about, devaluing others. And I think that's a major part of all of this is how we see others and how we interact with others and how we essentially look at their value. I almost wonder too if this is like, being able to see somebody not just as a commodity, but actually realizing everyone is of value to God first and foremost, and we are made in God's image, and that's really where our true value is. Like, it's not in how I dress myself, how I have achievements, how I, do all of these things, but actually the fact that I am made in the image of God gives me my highest amount of value. And I think that's what Jesus is maybe appealing to a bit.
Absolutely. I think the question behind all of this too, getting back to the Beatitudes a little bit, you talked about, being pure in heart. What about just asking the question, what am I ultimately hungry and thirsty for?
Yeah.
Right? Am I, and sometimes we mix up a little bit what we're thirsting for. And we go looking for gratification when, instead of, righteousness. Which is what Jesus started by inviting us into.
Yeah.
And so yes, so we can look at others and go, okay, that person in front of me, child of God, brother and sister in Christ, they, we can see all their worth. I think the other option for us, and it's probably a both and, is who am I?
Mm-hmm.
I'm a child of God. And so then how does a child of God act? Like, we think about some family rules that a family might have, right? We will love one another. We will respect each other. We will, seek forgiveness. We will, whatever kind of you might have in there. And we think about some of the family rules in the family of God. We will, hunger and thirst for righteousness. We will seek, to be pure in heart. We will, all of those beatitudes that come before it. More than that, we will, as the Spirit conforms us into Christ, we can frame that into, I will submit myself to Jesus first and foremost, right? And so when I think about just how am I going to approach my world, first question I got to start with, looking in the mirror every day, who am I?
Mm-hmm.
I am a son of the true King. Mm-hmm. I am a child of God. I am, and then approach not just the people in my life, but the whole world before me, my family first and everyone else after that, in light of who I am and ultimately who I want to be.
Yeah.
I want to be a faithful, member of the kingdom of God. I want to be a faithful servant of His. I want to just be I want to make my Heavenly Father proud.
Yeah.
And when I start my day that way, with that attitude, I think that helps align a few things as we go about it. Then from that, these people I meet, right? They're also loved by God, equally as I am.
Yeah, which makes them, another part of that family. And I think that's also why even maybe even Jesus uses the term of, unless you forgive your brother. Like, who really wants to have a family that's at odds? Yeah. Who wants to wake up in the morning and say, man, I'm looking forward to just scrapping with my brother or my sister, or to downplay their role in our family. Like, that is the worst idea of a household that should be working together. And actually, like, you ever go on those holidays where it's like, that was perfect. I loved being with everybody. It was such a good time, right? Like, it was so good, and I love being with these people, and they're so wonderful. And that's, I think, what maybe Jesus is kind of pulling us towards and appealing us towards, that each member of that family has not only good things to offer, in who they are, but most especially their value comes from the fact that they are a creation of God Himself, right? And that's where their true value comes from. And that's their greatest commodity, I guess.
Yeah.
Commodity. No, not commodity.
But value, right? Like, it's the greatest thing about every person is that we are deeply loved by God, made in His image, and we are objects of His affection, even if we're, even though we're also sometimes, stuck in sin and separate, we're still like, He loves people. Yeah. And finding the balance in that,
and that's why God the Father will sometimes come to the children and say, "Stop it!"
Right. Yeah. And here, I think we do have in this, Matthew 5, 6, and 7 section, where Jesus is just laying out like those family rules, right?
Yeah.
Like, seek reconciliation, right? Not just, which is bigger than just saying, I'm sorry. It's actually saying, hey, did I do something to offend you? Because it seems like there's a tension here, and going about that. And we'll see even further, without making the rules, but He's kind of establishing that new values of the kingdom, and away we go. So we'll see more in the weeks ahead of what there is. And as we look at this, I think it leads us to ask that question of who am I? Yeah. And who are the people around me? Yeah. And then how do we actually live together? Yeah. So it's he uses the specific example and case of adultery, but it's more about how are we treating one another beyond that. Because not everyone, I think it'd all be too easy to go, oh, the passage doesn't apply to me,
Right.
not an adulterer, away we go.
Yeah.
And yet we still, I think Jesus wants us to wrestle with it. Are we doing
Yeah.
are we doing adultery-like things in how we
Yeah.
treat one another?
And think about the culture of this kingdom.
Mm-hmm.
And do you want this kingdom that is coming forward, do you want it to look like this or look like this? This is the way of the kingdom. This is the culture that Christ is trying to bring.
Yeah.
This is what it might look like. Yeah. Be a part of that.
Mm-hmm.
Sweet.
All right. And in that, there's a whole lot of hope.
Mm-hmm.
And even though we sometimes wrestle with everything. So anyways, we're going to move on from that because we could just kind of ramble for far too long.
But I would say, in this way of like valuing others,
Yes.
making them a part of the family, here's one thing that you can be looking forward to in that.
Oh, here we go.
Is that we as a family of believers who say yes to Jesus, a prayer-led, spirit-empowered family who say yes to Jesus, we get to celebrate with those who are going to be celebrating. So this Sunday, there is a baby dedication, and it's a very exciting day so that all of us as a community, as a gathering, as a church, then come behind and beside this family and say, you know what? We value you as a part of this church. We value you as an individual that you have come together, and this child has been born into your family. That has value. That child has value, and so that's part of our celebration this Sunday in the baby dedication. So we'll see you Sunday in the service. We are going to celebrate that together with one of the families that call this place home. So there's a transition for you.
There you go. It's
So
a great
this family has
joy-filled
value.
moment. Yeah, absolutely. Also happening Sunday is all our Faith Night Warriors tickets are in. If you order tickets, see me on Sunday and pick those up, please, so you can get in. Because I'm not going to be at the door handing out tickets that night, but Sunday, I'd love to get those to you. Or if you're not here on Sunday, contact the office and we'll make time, figure out an opportunity to get those tickets into your hand. Because March 1st is going to be here before we know it.
I was going to say, for those that are keeping track, that February is short. I know this Sunday is the 23rd, but
Yep.
the Sunday after that is March, and then it's there. So this Sunday and then the Saturday after. So
Yeah.
week and a half, and we're there.
Absolutely, it'll be that. So that's yeah. Anyways, get your tickets if you ordered them. They're in. Anything else on the horizon for looking ahead? I think that's the big two things this week.
And pray for all the people that have sick people.
Sure, absolutely. And bring on spring. Anyways, thanks for spending a few minutes with us this week. We look forward to seeing you Sunday or in the near future.